It's we're reacting to SeeEl's new video. Uh, Backstory: he makes like competitive concepts or competitive videos, which are very enjoyable if you know anything about competitive. Generally speaking, we have pretty much the same view on things, me and him. So for the most part, I will agree with what he says. Um, or I have in the past agreed with what he says. Some things I don't agree with, but for the most part, I agree with it. We have pretty similar approach to things, and yeah, you should go sub to him. But let's see. He's talking about heralds and dynamic value.
Hello everyone, SeeEl here, and today I've prepared two very interesting topics for you guys. The first being about the value
Can
of
you
the
hear
herald,
it?
and tied to this, a concept called dynamic value. Now, I've always called it dynamic value, but it's better known as transformative value thanks to a well-known content creator called LS. Now, I believe
You can't hear? Can you actually not hear it?
it's better known as transformative value thanks
Yeah.
to a well-known content creator called LS. Now, I believe he coined it from a chess player.
I don't know. I can't turn up more. No, this is for me. Let's try this.
This is a re-recording of the original topics that I covered in
This
my
is good,
lecture
right?
slash live classroom. If you guys are interested in that kind of content, or you know, solo queue, or, just any kind of coaching content in general, feel free to chuck a follow. I'll leave the link down in the description below. Okay. Now, I don't really have a introductory video, so I'll just do a quick introduction on myself. My name is Chris. And you can call me SeeEl, Chris, whatever you want. I've coached in Oceania, in North America, and Europe full time in the last 3 years, sorry, not 3.5. And most recently, I was a finalist in the Spring LEC, Spring Playoffs in the LEC. Now, going straight into the topic, let's talk about the Rift Herald. What is its value? Okay. Now, the value should be determined by the opportunity cost of the Herald. So what is the cost benefit, and that should determine its value. The first, obviously, mathematically speaking, is the tower plating. Each tower plating is about 160 gold, and when you put the herald down, it'll kill 2 plates instantly. So that value is around is 320 gold. Okay, and if you manage to take the first tower, it should be 150 gold on top of that. So if you manage to take 5 plates plus first tower, that's 1,250 gold. Okay. Now, the other thing that people forget about with towers is that you get defensive stats based on the number of people around it. The more people you have, the stronger the tower is, or the tankier the tower is. And also, the less plates it has, the tankier the tower is. Okay, so by killing the herald, mathematically speaking, you can accelerate the time it takes to kill this thing, right? Now, the cost is generally associated with tempo.
Okay, so it's just talking about what Herald actually gives. Herald, you don't only get the gold from the Herald, from killing the Herald. You also get, I mean, for the most part, right? Depending on how you place it, but for the most part, you get at least 320 gold because of the 2 plates guaranteed. And obviously, there can be situations if you force a fight or you get a good fight beforehand, you can get a full tower. If you are to place the Herald, you don't want to place it when it's full HP, because if you place it on full HP, you will take the plates that are easier to take. So when you want to place Heralds, in a perfect world, you would place it when it's like here, 2.5 plates, 3-ish plates. And that's the value that the gold, or not the value, that's the value of the Herald, and not just the XP and gold from killing the Herald.
Kill this thing, right? Now, the cost is generally associated with tempo. Now, this is a widely used term in many coaching circles.
Yeah.
And I think every
True.
coach has a different definition for it, right? But for me, I've always defined it as the ability to move first. Okay, and I've always taught it this way. And basically, tempo gives you a turn on the map to do whatever you want. Okay, so you can get tempo by having wave control. So if you pushed 2-3 waves in the tower, and you move, then obviously the enemy have to take the minions. You can have tempo by recalling first. You can have tempo because the enemy took some time to kill an objective, right? aka a tower or a baron or a dragon. Okay. So the normal cost associated behind.
Okay, I think I will just explain after every section, just to make sure you guys understand. I think he's pretty good at explaining. He's very well spoken, but for me as well, obviously tempo is the ability to move first, as he said, and I use chess like as a good example. You know, if you are the white pieces, you get to move first, and then of course, depending on the situation, you might get to move twice in League. Um, and the reason why this is important to know is because with Herald, you can use it for many things. You don't have to break the tower. You can also use it to get tempo, or you can use it to get a pressure point that then leads into tempo. And that's what he's explaining here.
Baron or a dragon.
But I think he will
Okay.
explain it maybe deeper
So the
later.
normal cost associated behind taking the Herald is tempo. And the reason is it's obviously a valuable objective, so people are going to try to contest it. And in order to ensure that you have it, you need to create some sort of advantage. So either that is a compositional advantage, like you win 3v3 topside, or a man advantage, right? A lot of this man advantage comes from bot lane. So in this example, Kalista Renata, very oppressive bot lane. If you have a matchup like Senatam, for example, where you can push first 3-4 waves and just perma have tempo on the map, then this is generally what they will do. They'll swap top lane as bot, and Kalista Renata will shift into top, in which there is man advantage and control over the Herald. Now the other example is obviously like a matchup like SeeEl Karma. If they have a very strong top laner like Renekton that they want to use, like in early levels, right, for the first Herald, that they want to use during the Herald fight, then maybe they just shift the support. But once again, they need to use a ton of tempo. And to gain that tempo, in the case of SeeEl Karma, they have a lot of wave control. They need to push bot and recall, and Karma will run straight through mid into this area, right, to create this man advantage, right? I mean, in this situation, they can also swap, but Ezreal's an example where they can stay bot, okay? So generally speaking, this is the cost of taking the Herald. Normally a shift in tempo in one way, shape, or form. Sometimes you do see clean 3v3s, but a lot of the time a well-prepared team will move their supports and either match or prepare a wave down bot. So
Okay, so he's talking about specific ways that you can swap for Herald and specific ways that you can gain the Herald. Obviously, depending on what kind of comp you're playing, it is different. And this is something I've talked about as well. If you have specific play patterns, you already know what you want to do, fundamentally, and then you just have to figure it out perfectly within the game, right? But if you have specific play patterns set up as a team, you already know what you're trying to do because you already drafted to match these play patterns. And obviously, that is important to know when you want to play the Herald. So he's just explaining that.
the side that is giving up the Herald, right, that is not contesting the Herald, is generally doing that for two reasons, right? One of two reasons, or both reasons. The first major one being that they don't win, right? They don't win a 3v3 or 4v4. They just have stronger champions early. Or two, that they might just not have control of the wave, and they'll just be second, right? So generally, these are the reasons why they'll give the Herald, and because the red side in this case is using their turn to move to Herald, the blue side can always look to stack a wave and trade the plates on the opposite side. So as we talked about previously, the cost of the Herald is tempo. The benefit of the Herald is 2 plates. So if the blue side is able to trade 2 plates, then this is a close to even trade because they get waves as well. And if in the case that blue side is playing a scaling pick like Jinx, then that can't win early skirmishes anyway, then the person that uses gold more effectively is going to be on the blue side, right? So yeah, generally speaking, tempo is a cost. Now this is where dynamic value comes in, right? Basically, the idea behind dynamic value and the concept of dynamic value is that the value changes. The values of items, champions, compositions, and Herald changes based on the situation. So if you talk about Herald, it can be used to accelerate the game, right? And it can be used on any tower. Let's just delve a little bit more into this. So to give you an example of dynamic value in compositions, right? In compositions, um, let's look at Lulu or Galio. Now, these two champs, they're very good when champs come into them because they are able to polymorph or taunt, and in the case of both of them, provide some sort of shielding and peeling, right? So a champ like Akali that wants to dive into backline would lose value, and a champ like Lulu and Galio would have greater value in these type of games because they are a counter to each other, right? This is where dynamic value comes in, and this is where compositions matter. Now,
Okay. Obviously, guys, if you are playing Lulu into Akali, the champion has more value, and that's basically what he's explaining. And I think he's explaining it really well, so I don't have to say really much here. It's just depending on the situation you're in, a champion has more value. It's very simple, right? He's just talking about drafting and compositions and stuff like that, which is important for team play. It's not essential for solo queue, but for team play, very important.
alternatively, you could say that champs like Jace or Ezreal lower the value of Galio and Lulu because you can outrange them and poke them down, right? And so
Yeah, so in a situation where you counter the enemy, your champion is stronger and has higher value, whereas in a situation where you get outranged and you can't really play into them, your champion obviously has less value. So you have to make up for that in other ways, or you just don't draft it like an idiot.
you have no reason to actually hard engage on them. So bringing back the topic of the value of the Herald, what is a dynamic value of Herald given each situation? We'll bring three champions up and kind of look at each champion as a case study, right? Look at Kalista, Renekton, and Jinx. Kalista, terrible scaling, scales variably but often bad, right? You can close games very quickly because it's very good at snowballing. It's very good at taking early dragons. You can force sell at like 23 minutes or whatever. But more often than not, it's countered by multiple comps. Wukong, Poppy, Talia. The more items they have, the harder it is for you to play. Champs like Senna as well. And
Yeah, okay. So because he went through it, I just want to elaborate quickly. Again, guys, important to understand that the champion can be in a really good spot if the draft is good for her. But for the most part, if you do the Kalista early game, not early game, but early, which you usually will do, then you can draft a lot of champions around her to make her less value. So her dynamic value goes down, and then she has to make up for it by either playing waves extremely well and getting a huge lead out of enemies' mistakes. And in a situation like that, her value is a lot lower than it could be if the draft was good for her. So he will probably explain it deeper.
Champs like Senna as well. And you have like Renekton. It's like the same thing. You get outscaled by a lot of top laners. Ornn, you get outscaled by Aatrox. And it also struggles to close the games alone, so it's even worse in Kalista. But more often than not, it's just an early game facilitator, so you can make sure that you're taking these heralds and snowballing the game for the early game, right?
Okay, he's going very fast over them, so I just want to make sure he doesn't leave any information out. Of course, the way he explains it to people that actually understands what he's saying to some extent. But when you pick Renekton, you're not picking him to carry games. You never do that. You pick him because, for example, he talked about Herald earlier on. In a situation like that, you have a really, really strong fighter for the Herald, and then you get the Herald because you aim to close the game out on fourth Drake or maybe Baron. You aim to close it out really, really fast, so he doesn't get to a point where he just is completely unplayable. So think of him like a jungler that facilitates, let's say, I don't know, like a Trundle. He isn't the main carry. He will never be the main carry. There's obviously going to be spots where he is more playable and scales better, so his dynamic value goes up. But for the most part, his dynamic value goes down. So just want to make sure that I mention it for the guys that don't actually understand what I'm saying. But yeah, as I said,
thought that you're taking these heralds and snowballing the game from.
It's just important.
Right? So third example, Jinx. Well, it scales extremely well. But because it struggles to build BT early in its item path, it may be countered by range, right? So you can get poked down. Still extremely proficient at sieging, scales very well. It can probably stall the games moderately decently as long as you still have towers up, right? So what does this kind of entail? Games
Yeah,
moderately.
so Jinx obviously doesn't like Bloodthirster, but she can do it. But to counter her and to make her dynamic value go down, you would want champions that poke her from long range. You would want champions that doesn't allow her to get to a state where even if she is fine in the game, she still isn't that high value because she can't hit. Champions like Zoe, Jace, Varus, champions that outrange her and does not allow her to hit. It's kind of the same for Aphelios, but to stay on point, if her dynamic value is good, it's because she can hit a lot and she doesn't have like a hard time into enemy comp. I think that's the easiest way to say it, to make sure there's no like misunderstandings.
Decently as long as you
Misunderstanding.
still have towers up, right? So what does this kind of entail in terms of dynamic value relative to Herald with these champions? Well, as you can see, very unhappy when you're trading the map as Kalista and Renekton. You really want to accelerate. You really want to make sure that you have full control towers. You shift first. You have deep pushed waves into Drake stacking. Whereas, Jinx has an option. Jinx has the option to go to Herald. If they can win the Herald fight, great. You are taking Herald on a scaling champion. Fucking absolutely wonderful. If you're trading the opposite side and you're stacking waves and you're taking 2 plates, that's still great as well, as long as you're able to stall the game and, not completely lose off a Drake Soul or, Elder or Baron or whatever, right? So, same topic, but let's talk about control mages, because control mages also impact the dynamic value of the Herald, right? We know that control mages are very oppressive because they're very long range. They've got very good wave clear for the same game. And
What does it mean to trade map? Okay, so I don't want to like over-explain because I want to stay on point. Trading map can potentially there's only one way to say this, right? If we play for top and enemy plays for bot side, we don't want that. We want them to fight us head on, and we want to force plays where we are on the same side. So we don't want to give them Drake while we take Herald, for example. We want to always be in control. We always want them to fight us early on. We do not want us to be in a situation where they are getting a lot on the other side while we are also getting a lot because she scales better. Jing scales better. So if we give her 500 gold and we give these two 500 gold, or just take a list because I see this is 500 gold, this is 500 gold. She uses that 500 gold a lot better than she does, and we will eventually reach a point where if we trade even, she will just be a way better champion. So that's what it means.
not completely lose off a Drake Soul or, Elder or Baron or whatever, right? So, same topic, but let's talk about control mages, because control mages also impact the dynamic value of the Herald, right? We know that control mages are very oppressive because they're very long range. They've got very good wave clear for the same reason. They're very good at stalling, and they have really insane scaling, right? And the 2 most famous ones that come to my mind is Orianna and Victor, but champs like Syndra and Anivia can also be good in certain spots. Anivia particularly against like low range champions. So, why does like Orianna, and why does the Herald value go up with these control mages? Well, it can accelerate the time that the first tier 1 tower dies. And if you lose the first tier 1 tower, then you're either putting a control mage in side lane, or you're putting an AD carry in side lane with support mid and an AD carry alone in a side lane, right? And this is bad. If you get deep mid push and the tier 1 is gone, you're often going to lose control of your jungle.
I wasn't listening because of you.
And Anivia can also be good in certain
I was thinking about Orianna.
Is Orianna and Victor, but champs like Syndra and Anivia can also be good in certain spots. Anivia particularly against like low range champions. So, why does mid tower, and why does the Herald value go up with these control mages? Well, it can accelerate the time that the first tier 1 tower dies. And if you lose the first tier 1 tower, then you're either putting a control mage in side lane, or you're putting an AD carry in side lane with support mid and an AD carry alone in a side lane, right? And this is bad. If you get deep mid push and the tier 1 is gone, you're often going to lose control of your jungle. And if you lose control of your jungle, it often leads to a man advantage in the side lane, right? You're going to lose vision on your jungle and they're going to shift and go mid into bottom, mid into top. And because of this lack in vision, it's much more harder to defend or deep push, in which you will most likely lose your tier 1 out of turrets, right? And eventually the game. So, Using the same example, mid tower has basically a lot of value in games without control mages for that same reason, right? And also, um, it means that Herald value is less in games without control mages as well. Okay, if you have a bot lane combo that can provide mid priority for you, right, and you have no control mage, that's even better because a lot of these non-control mage champions are very mobile. Ari being the most famous one of them, and a lot of bot lane champions right now provide that, right? Caitlyn Lux, Lucian Nami, Ezreal X, Ezreal Karma, for example. These champions can provide mid prior for you. So, for example, if Ari opts to give the Herald, use his turn to go to bot instead, and then Caitlyn goes mid because Caitlyn breaks 5 plates using Ari's earlier move, even if you lose the mid tower by losing the Herald, even if you're trading like this and they're accelerating the game or whatever, Caitlyn Lux can still provide your mid prior, can still contest without the mid tower, right? And you can stop them from basically pushing deep and taking full control. And even if they have full control, these mobile champions can essentially avoid these shifts, right? And defend better and farm better, okay? So in general, yeah, mid tower has low value in games without control mages. So Herald has low value. Herald has low value when you have scaling on your bot side, and Herald has low value if your bot lane can provide, mid prior permanently. A lot of this just comes down to, mid prior.
Okay, so he's talking obviously about the fact that if you're playing against a control mage, I think I'll just sum it up for you guys. If you play against a control mage, if you can force them into side lane, let's just go with like Vel'Koz or Orianna or whatever. These champions are extremely immobile, or not extremely mobile, but they're immobile, and their main job is not to side lane, or not their main job, but they don't like side laning. More than often, like they don't want to be in a situation where they have to catch the wave up here, for example, while the mid shove is coming in. So if we have mid shove and there's a wave here, for example, Orianna can't really walk up because we can have full control because of mid push, and then she can't walk up, and she will be in a very, very hard situation. Whereas a champ like, I don't know, Ari, let's just use that example, doesn't have the same issue because she can easily get out of situations like that. But yeah, he's just talking about, again, how Herald dynamically has higher value depending on the situation you're in. Whereas if you are playing Lucian Nami and you have a control mage, you can still contest the mid prio even if you don't have prio, or not prio, but the tower.
Permanently.
I explained it pretty bad, but I think you get the point. He explained it pretty well.
A lot of this just comes down to scaling, right? Scaling basically just gives the opportunity to have more comeback mechanics or outs. And the dynamic value is more often a lot more narrower with scaling comps because you have more choices and you have the ability to just stall out games and win because time is your friend, right? You're happy to trade sides, therefore the value of Herald goes down. And friend, right?
Champ like Elise, champ like Rek'Sai, champs, early game champs, Kalista, Renekton, and stuff like that. They have to close out the game really, really fast. So the Herald, the first Herald is a must. If you don't get the first Herald, you FF the game. So the way that you set it up and the way you play around it is extremely, extremely important. And therefore, this graph is like pretty good, right? The more time you have, the less value the Herald has, which again is the dynamic value. So therefore, if you can trade, you would rather do that than take a 50-50% fight on Herald, for example. Whereas Elise and Renekton, champs like that, they would rather take the 60-40 fight because the more time goes by, the less percentage you have in the fight if you are not really far ahead.
You're happy to trade sides, therefore the value of Herald goes down. And a really good example of dynamic value in a modern game, aside from rogue games, which I will not be posting on my videos for obvious reasons.
What the fuck? Why is he so serious when he says this?
on my games, which I will
It's so serious when he says this.
um, not be posting on my videos for obvious reasons, is like the
Fuck, this draft is so disgusting. This champ is not champ, but this draft is fucking disgusting. You have two champs that want to go in, and then you have a Siri Renata that wants to play more slow, and then the puppy that, yeah, I mean, she also wants to play slower. Like, this draft is fucking awful.
CLG versus TL
Goddamn.
game recently, right? The game 5 where
Game 5
CLG
and you do
picks
this on CLG. Game
Akali
5.
Lane and TL picks Jinx Lulu. Well, if I'm
That's
Jinx
sick.
Lulu, they can take the Herald. You know, I'm really okay as long as we're trading the opposite side. Aside from the obvious, you know, other aspects of dynamic value, like compositional dynamic value, in which CLG
Yeah, so again, just sum up quickly, like, in this situation, if you don't get the Herald on the side, you do not mind, because you have absurd scaling. You have a Cillian and a Lulu on Jinx, so as long as you don't lose the game really, really early, the game should be won. Because you can hit them very relatively easy. You have Hansama, very good ADC, with two enchanters. Obviously, Cillian being, I'm assuming, a little bit more AP heavy, but still able to be as, enchanter. So if you don't get the Herald, you do not mind, as long as you get something on the other side. So if they swap and they go top and they get the Herald, we want to get some plates on bot, something like that, or potentially dive the Yone, because they don't have an Ornn or a GP that can take the wave. They have a Yone that's fucking useless. Holy shit, this draft is
picks two
disgusting.
hard engaged champions into Zillion and Lulu, which, as we talked about before, lowers their value altogether, right? Now, if I were to go one step further, I mean, I'd like to talk about the inconsistencies in this draft. For example, Zeri, Renata, Poppy, all champions that want you to come in, right? Zeri ulti into kiting back, Renata ulti, Poppy W, Poppy ulti. So, I mean, the comp itself doesn't make sense, but that aside, okay, you can see how you're happy to
I like how he mentions it, even though, it has no value to the video that he's talking about, but he still has to mention it just to mention it. I like it.
trade the map and how scaling gives you more
I like
options
it.
and more outs. And I believe in this game, Hans just did like this super swap into top side, and he just got 3 items and stalled the game until, he was able to just win the game from that, right? So, in summary, you could say that the value of Herald changes depending on the draft. The purpose of every game is to win. So if you have scaling, you have more decisions in the game and you have more opportunities where it can lead to winning conditions. This doesn't mean you have a higher win percentage. If you have a champ like Kalista, your team plays it very well, or it's extremely OP in the meta, for example, and there's just no way to stop the snowball. If there is no way to really stall the game out, then obviously scaling can be bad in certain metas or certain champions, so I could see that happening, right? And you could also say that early game comps are harder to play because the range, the
The
dynamic
margin of error.
value range.
The margin of error when you play early game champions or early game comps. Let's say the game that I just had with the Elise Renekton. I can't remember what sites. Yeah, Kate Lux. The margin of error is really, really small. So if you make a mistake into a scaling comp, you're just gonna lose. It's like a lot of you guys probably have played against like Kog'Maw Lulu, where Kog'Maw Lulu is actually fine within the game, or Master Yi. Actually, let me use this one instead. Master Yi and Taric Funnel. You guys have played against it, I'm sure of it. If you make, it's not the same, I'm just talking about solo queue here, but for team play, it's not the same. But if you make a big mistake, you will lose the game because they just hit a spike where you can't kill them. But for team play, it's obviously not the same. But for solo queue, the Taric Yi funnel is probably the best example. If you make one mistake, draft isn't perfect against them, you just lose the game.
Is a lot wider. Okay, the cost of not getting your Herald is a lot wider. The way that you have to play and the decisions that you have to make, and the general margin of error is extremely low. Okay, so yeah, you have less options and you need to play better. And in the end, I know a lot of coaches watch this. Each team is different. There is a close to perfect way to play, right? I think in a lot of cases you can just study the meta and the value of the Herald changes, and you could like talk about all this, but it comes down to how deep are you into the season? You know, are you in the playoffs, or are you in the regular season, or are you at the beginning of the season, or are you in summer, like week 7 of regular season? Based on the amount of time you have, the strengths of your team, the strengths of your players, you need to change um, how you draft and how you value these heralds, and how often you want to fight, and how you want to coach, or how you want to approach these fights in general, right? A lot of the time it will be band-aid solutions, and more often than not, if you manage to create a team that's extremely good around these early objectives, they will most often win championships. Okay, so I hope this video helped. I enjoyed making it. If you'd like to see more of this in the future, please subscribe. Please put the thumbs up, share it to your friends. You know, tell your dad, call your grandma. You know, let them know that SeeEl created a video and this guy's awesome. This guy's great. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Bye, guys.
I will wait 1 sec. I have to go call my mother. Tell her SeeEl made a video. No, but um, good video. Good video for a lot of people for sure, including a lot of you guys in chat. I will link it for you guys. But just to give me my thoughts on it, the way that you draft should always fit the players you have. There are certain players where you are able to change their minds, but when you build a team, you already know how you want to play. So you draft teams or you draft players according to how you want to play the game. And how you think the game is played the best. If you think that early game is the best, let's say you think Kalista, Draven, Lucian, Nami, stuff like that, you think that is the best way to play, then that is what you should do. You should draft players that are benefiting from this, and you should draft someone like the Antonio that can give you champions that and a way to play that other players might not, or there was just an example. I think that guy is very one-dimensional, but I don't want to talk about that now. It's a good video, and you should definitely go follow him and all that. I will keep watching his videos and give my thoughts on it because he is one of the only people, as far as I know, that post like public content now. So I will definitely watch them, and I will give my 2 cents on it, and I will let you guys hear my thoughts on the videos. So yeah, thank you for watching. Watch SeeEl here on the link, and go watch his video, and go subscribe to him.